Welcome to our show, Real Deal. I'm one of the hosts, Josh Benjamin, here on The Grueling Truth, and I have another guest / host who's probably going to be a host very, very shortly, very soon, is Patrick Miller. Patrick's also along with us here on The Grueling Truth, which is the Real Deal show. Patrick, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm ready to get started, but before we get to that, I just want to shout out to all of our listeners. Hey, you can go to our website, thegruelingtruth.net. You can find us on there with multiple shows of different areas of sports. You can also find us on Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Music, iTunes, iHeartRadio. You can also, if you have an iPhone, go on the App Store and download the app, The Grueling Truth, and listen to us and tons of other people, and probably more so them than us after you start listening to us. But you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, our own personal Facebook. We talk a lot of sports on Facebook and our personal accounts. We also have a page and a group, The Real Deal. And then also we have our Twitter accounts at Coach JB4. We also have The Grueling Truth Twitter account, Real Deal THT. And then, Patrick, you also have a Twitter account, which is, I can't remember at this point.
Mine is at Patrick Miller 4.
All right, so you have tons of areas to listen to us, to talk to us, to bash us, to do all those things. All the listeners out there, thank you in advance for listening to us. But tonight we talk about something that has been kind of on our minds lately, and it's been about some different things with sports. And any sport can go along with this, is either do fans or just even players or coaches want to see greatness, or do they want to see parity? And so tonight we're going to start out with that. And before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsors, MyBookie AG. If you go to our website, thegruelingtruth.net, and you go on there, click on there to do all your bets, you can place those bets on there on our website. So mybookie.ag, it's a large banner right across the middle of the screen at the very top. So you can always go there for that. All right, so greatness and parity, Patrick. We kind of discussed this before we got on the air, obviously, and we talked about some greatness in individuals and teams. And we talked about some parity as well. So what's one that comes to mind that you want to talk about first, whether it's greatness or parity? I guess we should define that before we go along. So, Patrick, do you want to talk about greatness when it comes to what we want to see in an individual or a team?
Yeah, so greatness, I think, with in the Super Bowl, I think is a great segue into it, especially with the New England Patriots. But greatness is a concept of a state of superiority, whether that's in an individual sport. We can go far back. If you think about golf and Tiger Woods, definitely greatness in the sport when he was in his prime. And then also there's still one in an individual sport that a lot of people may not think about, and that's Roger Federer in tennis. And I think the superiority that those two athletes show definitely defines their greatness, just because they've dominated not only their sport, but they've dominated their sport for so many years. I mean, Roger Federer, I believe, is in his 15th season as a tennis pro, if not longer, and then Tiger Woods as well. Those are definitely two. And then when we think about teams, you obviously think about the New England Patriots, and what people refer to them greatness, they would consider a dynasty. So from a team and an individual standpoint, there's plenty of examples in regards to greatness. Those are just a few off the top of my head. And I think the New England Patriots is probably the freshest in everybody's minds, coming off the tough loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of the greatness part there. So kind of break it down a little bit is essentially when you think of greatness, whether it's team or individual in whatever sport it is, if someone asked you who's the best NBA basketball player of all time, and then that instant for you to think about whoever that is, I think describes greatness, because most fans already have that predetermined in their head. And correct me if I'm wrong with that, but that's why I agree with that in a lot of aspects. So they obviously have seen this person play for team play. They've also obviously invested their time to watch, invested their ability to dedicate whatever they're doing, whether they could have been fixing the house, playing with the kids, taking the wife out for the dinner, which is probably what they should have been doing. But they invested all this time with what they have been watching for years, but they know that predetermined, and they've discussed this before, obviously. So I think when someone asks someone, hey, who is the best player or team in this sport, it automatically comes to their mind, whether it's one person or whether it's 5 people. And so I think that's like the breakdown of what greatness is. And, if you were to ask, as far as NBA players, it would be, first thing, in my opinion, I think the first person would say Michael Jordan. The next person could say LeBron James or Bryant or whoever. But more than likely, if you would poll 10, 100,000 people, I almost guarantee overwhelming amount is Michael Jordan. So I think that's what determines greatness.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. And again, just to go off of what you were saying, anybody that follows, everybody has their sports that they like to follow, whether it's golf and tennis, whether their top 3 sports are Major League Baseball, football. If you ask them that question and you say, hey, who is the greatest of all time in your sport, easily somebody can ramble off, a Michael Jordan. Okay, who's the greatest quarterback of all time? And they could say Tom Brady, who is the greatest Major League Baseball player of all time. And easily there's names that come to mind. And I think that defines greatness and as well as sports. And I think within sports as well, greatness in teams is what everybody likes to see when you ask who are the greatest teams in NFL history. Recently people can automatically ramble off 3 teams and would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Green Bay Packers, and the New England Patriots, just because of their winning. And I think winning is also a good definition of greatness. You have to win, and you have to win when it matters to be defined as greatness. Just because if you never win the big game, I don't think that takes away from being great, but I don't think you can consider yourself one of the greatest to ever do anything if you don't win when it matters.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue, because I was about to say, so as far as if we were to break it down, besides the analogy I just mentioned earlier about if you were to ask the question, I think you look at stats, what do you look at? Do you look at stats? Do you look at rings, championship rings? Do you look at just overall success, winning percentage of when you're on that team? Do you transition a sport into something where they thought it wasn't going to be or go to? Because one football player comes to mind, that's Dan Marino. He never won a Super Bowl. I think he helped revolutionize the passing game in the NFL because he was one of the pioneers to throw for how many thousands of yards and then to not win, and when he actually had a pretty decent team and did not win. So if I were to ask you, Patrick, maybe the listeners can chime in on our Facebook page or on our the Real Deal Facebook page or our group page, or even personally on our Facebook pages or our Twitter account. But would you say that Dan Marino is great?
I would definitely say that as far as NFL quarterbacks, he is great, but I think he misses to be one of the greatest. And when we talk in greatness of him, I think he's missing those caliber wins. With Tom Brady winning 5 Super Bowls and Michael Jordan winning 6 NBA championship rings. And even, you can throw Ben Roethlisberger in there. I believe he has 3 Super Bowl rings. People throw his name in the discussion just based upon the fact that he wins, and he wins when it matters. And you are correct in saying that Dan Marino is a great quarterback. But when you talk about greatness in quarterbacks, I think there's always an asterisk next to his name and saying that that he's one of the greatest just because he could never get over that hump and win that game. And that's why I parallel in the fact that greatness is parallel with winning. If you can't win that game, then I don't think that you can throw your name in the hat to be one of the greatest. And I think, and to segue into another sport, when we're talking about the NBA and Russell Westbrook, we're seeing an athlete that only comes once in a great while. LeBron James is also one of those. But the numbers that Russell Westbrook has been putting up the last 2 or 3 years in the NBA are something that we've just never seen since Oscar Robinson, which is a while. And the biggest asterisk next to Russell Westbrook's name is that he just can't win that game. He can't get to the finals and win that game. And I think that, I don't want to, I just don't think that Russell Westbrook will ever get over the hump. I don't think his style of play and his abilities are fit for winning a championship. Another great segue to that would be Carmelo Anthony. He's also another score the basketball. He rebounds. But again, he could never, whether he was in Denver or whether he was in New York, could never just get that asterisk next off his name that I'm going to win an NBA championship. And I think even if they just won one, even if Dan Marino just won one championship, they're automatically in that conversation of greatness because they got their one. And I think with Tom, and with Tom Brady, it's almost like when you get that one Super Bowl win or you get that one NBA championship or any championship in any sport, kind of gets the pressure and the camel off the back type thing, and it propels you to, you're in that situation again and you get back to that game, you can win it again. And I think that's what Tom Brady's done. That's what LeBron James has done. That's what Michael Jordan's done. That's what Roger Federer does. Tiger Woods, they've been in those types of moments. They've been in those big game situations, and that's why their names are the greatest when we think of those sports.
Oh, I think that, first of all, Russell Westbrook is a beast. That dude, every time I watch him, he just plays so daggone hard that I just get, I get chills down my spine thinking about him playing, just being so aggressive. He's a guy that, like, okay, there's a rivalry, and then we can talk about the rivalries later in the show, but he is, like, so gritty, and he just grinds, and he just is so mad that even if it was, like, his brother playing against him, which that may be a synonym for this, but he just acts like they're the worst people in the world, and he just tries to beat them so badly. I think that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and he never takes a play off, too, and you can't fault the guy for that. It's just his style of play has just never been conducive to getting him over that hump. You know, I mean, he's a two-time NBA scoring champ. He's a seven-time All-Star. He's a six-time All-NBA. He was the MVP of the 2016-17 season. The regular season numbers are there for him. I mean, the numbers that he puts up, and like you said, how hard he plays and those types of things. And he is great. He's a great player, no doubt about it. When we talk about top players in the NBA, you can't leave Russell Westbrook's name out of it just due to the sheer numbers that he puts up and the effect that he has on the Oklahoma City Thunder. But again, until he wins that game, I don't think that he'll ever throw his name in the hat to be in the top 20, top 15, top 10 players of all times, like you can throw a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James. People have even started saying Steph Curry's name's in there, and he's still got plenty of years to play. And you know, I don't even think you could throw Steph Curry's name in there, but it's being thrown in there, and I think it's being thrown in there because of the fact that he's been able to win 2 NBA championships. So, you know, just it's one of those tough conversations that are always had in sports. And you know, is it the championships, or can we put a weight on regular season numbers and awards and different things like that without championships?
I'm pretty sure that there's a guy or someone, even a woman or whoever out there, that is creating this formula for greatness, And it's going to go for any sport. It's going to adapt to any statistic. I just probably, if no one's out there doing that, then I just give an idea to somebody and they're going to make millions. And I'm going to sit here and continue to do this show, Real Deal, with you. And so I think that along with the conversation about Westbrook, for example, or Jerry West, I know he was 1-8. I think he was 1-1. Maybe I'm incorrect on that. But, guys like that have been really, really good. I'm going to say good just because we're talking about greatness, and greatness, I think we're involving winning championships. And I think that I think that is just the greatest area possible when you talk about greatness, because in football and in baseball more so, I would say they're very comparable now. I take that back. That, and more so football now because of the rings, and that's the most popular sport in the U.S. right now. But I would say football and baseball are comparable. That you need to have really good teammates and a good system and a good coaching staff and a good owner and player development and all those things to make it work. And it takes so many, and yet Tom Brady gets all the, which he deserves it. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I think the O-line, in which they do compliment, and that's just a comment into the media, but the whole organization deserves so much credit. Even though Tom Brady threw for, how many yard touchdowns in the Super Bowl, it's just so hard to pinpoint, okay, this person's the greatest. But like I said, I think there's got to be a way, whether it's now, 15, 20 years when we're dead, that there's going to be something that's going to determine, okay, who's great and who's not. Maybe it's something involving like QBR and ESPN, which the stats that you mentioned were from ESPN, but they have a QBR system that's much better, in my opinion, than a QB rating system. So maybe there's something coming along that they're working on to get that. But I would bet, if I were a betting man, on what Russell Westbrook would win before he retires. But speaking of betting, you go to our website, thegrizzlytruth.net, listeners. You can also bet on there, MyBookie AG. If you click the banner, you can go there and make all your bets. But going back to greatness, let's talk about organizations, teams, programs, etc. One that comes to mind is the UConn women's basketball team, and they've just dominated, the last 25 years probably. They've won roughly 11 championships, and, I mean, what are your thoughts? Obviously, once a couple come to them as far as the championships, obviously the recruits keep coming, and then it just keeps going, kind of like Mississippi and Alabama. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, and this is one of the rarest occasions that we're never going to see, at least in our lifetime, somebody like Gino Auriemma dominate a sport as well and as effective as he has in women's basketball. I mean, he hasn't gone more than 5 years without winning a national championship, and every year he is in the consideration for winning a national championship. And it's funny that, you were talking about with the Patriots how Tom Brady gets tons of accolades in the greatness category, but also, there was a coach behind him, there was an offensive coordinator behind him, there was an owner in Robert Kraft behind him. And I think when we look at UConn women's basketball, we flip it around and we give all the accolades to Gino Auriemma. We don't think about the greatness of a Diana Taurasi or a Maya Moore or those types of players. It's Gino Auriemma. And if you go back and look, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but every year Gino Auriemma never, I don't want to say never, but he's not, he doesn't always get the top recruiting class because he's a mastermind in his system, the way that he runs it, and the type of player that he needs for each position. He needs a versatile four player that can shoot the basketball instead of athletic rebounding four player. He needs a traditional five man who can play with their back to the basket, and he puts each one of these players in such a great position to succeed year in and year out that I think that's why he gets the players that he does, because they know even if they're, say, the fourth best ranked center by ESPN in women's college basketball coming into their freshman year, that eventually, if not their freshman year, their sophomore year, they're going to be put in a position to not only win a national championship, but to be the best at their position, because he recruits so well to his system. And that goes back to Bill Belichick and him making that move for James Harrison, and them signing him from the Steelers. I think that was a great move on their part. They wanted that veteran leadership due to all the injuries that they had on defense. And I think you're right, Josh, that we just don't look at everything as a whole in some sports and in other sports that we do. And when you have a winning percentage of 88%, winning almost close to 1,000 games over 32 years, I think that's something that we're just never going to see again. And in a rare occasion too, I think that people like Gino, at least in women's basketball, they kind of handicap the sport a little bit, because I think it kind of takes away from, and which will be one of our next point, the parity in the sport. And I think that it really hurts when they're viewers and things like that, because at the end of the day, everybody always says, with women's basketball, well, UConn's going to win it again this year. I mean, and that's just how everybody's outlook is on it. So, but the numbers that Gino puts up at UConn are unbelievable, and you can tell that it's him and his system, because he's turned that over as well as far as the USA, and has won a couple gold medals as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that as a fan, as a spectator, as just a person that's a lover of sports, you want to see greatness in your lifetime so that you could say that you've seen it. And I think that goes back to the question that I said, what is greatness? And then you ask, who's the best at this? And then, boom, there's your greatness question right there. But, Parity brings competition, and it brings the grit and grind to win whatever championship, whatever they're trying to win. And I think that's great, too. And we'll talk about Parity in just a second. But I think that that's so important to also have. But personally, I would rather see greatness. And greatness doesn't win all the time. I think that a lot of people, a lot of quote-unquote haters of, the Patriots and Spurs and UConn's women's basketball team, or Tiger Woods or Roger Federer or whoever, and, they don't have to win every time, but they win most of the time of what their career is coming to in between there. And so, I think that greatness also brings the competition, along with Parity does that as well. But I think greatness brings that competition. But how many teams or players get this quote-unquote losing mindset, or this overwhelming mindset of I can't beat them, or I can't beat him or her, and when playing that great quote-unquote great team or player? I think that happens more often than not when you play these labeled players or teams that are labeled greatness. I think that's important to understand too, because it happens, and I've seen it happen, and I've been a part of both sides, and not that caliber, obviously, because if you look at me, I'm definitely not an athlete. So if I think a lot of people understand that as a fan as well, because more than likely they've played that sport, or it doesn't have to be a sport. It could be whatever. It could be a card game even. It could be anything that has a competitive side to it. And so let's talk about parity and what that means, because you could say that out of the four major sports, let's go three in the U.S., basketball, NBA, MLB, and NFL. Parity happens more in Major League Baseball than out of the other two. Would you agree, or would you disagree at this point, if we were to look at, let's say, the last 20 years? Would you agree with that? Would you say that Major League Baseball is so?
Yeah, I would say that. I definitely would say that. I think that we've seen the variety of winners. It does seem that over the last 20 years that you always have that feeling the same teams are there. When you talk about the New York Yankees, you talk about the Boston Red Sox, you talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, who they're always in a discussion just because of the organization and how it's ran. They're every year they're going to be talked about, regardless of their personnel or anything like that. They always, are going to be up there. But the Houston Astros coming through and winning the World Championship this past year, I think, shows. Kansas City Royals as well, coming along, lower market teams that are able to compete against these powerhouse teams like the Yankees and like the Red Sox. But I would definitely agree that if there's parity across one sport, it's probably Major League Baseball, which to me, on the other hand, is also kind of shocking because they're the only ones that really don't have any type of salary cap. The MLB or the NBA and the NFL both have salary caps to try to keep the parity in the sport, and it's just kind of shocking how with those two major sports holding a salary cap and the MLB not really having a salary cap, that's where we do see most of the parity.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that if you were looking at the last roughly 20 years, Yankees, Giants, most recent, Red Sox, Cardinals, I think that's the majority if you were the teams that would have won it. But if you look at NFL and you look at the last 20-some years roughly, let's say 20-ish, Patriots have been to 8. If you look at with the AFC, it's either been, for the most part, Big Ben and the Steelers, Tom Brady and the Patriots, or Peyton Manning with Indianapolis or Denver. So I think that you go and you look at NBA, same thing. How many have the Spurs won? A lot. How many has LeBron been to? A bunch. The Warriors are part of that conversation right now. So I think that Major League Baseball has that parity out of the three if you were to choose. But parity, brings so many things to the table. It brings a lot of competition in the fact that everyone's got a chance. And not saying when you start August 1st in training camp for the NFL that you don't have a chance. But, what has shown in the past 18 years roughly, is, New England's going to be there, or Pittsburgh's going to be there, or, a team with Peyton Manning on the team is going to be there. So, and the same thing goes with NBA, with LeBron James being on the team, or, the Spurs and their dynasty that they created, or now the Warriors and what they've done in the last few years. So, baseball brings that mix of, and I'm shocked as well with the luxury or with the salary cap. And, the other organizations, NFL and I'm sorry, not Major League Baseball, but NBA, they have luxury tax and all that good stuff too. But it's just very unlikely to happen if you were to choose out of the three. But parity brings more competition, the ability to think about, hey, I got a chance to win. And it brings, I think, the sport up now that I think about it, because now you have fans that are going to be very anxious to see their teams play, which would drive either ticket sales or TV ratings and apparel, for that matter, sales for that. It's going to bring the excitement regionally, especially if you talk about Major League Baseball, because that's more of a regional type sport when they advertise that. And I just think that's a really good thing to have as well. I think a common mixture of greatness and parity is important in any fan or player's lifetime, to see both aspects of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with those words, they go hand in hand too. And as I'm sitting here thinking of all of our discussion, greatness drives. Parity or greatness drives parity, in the sense that there's this one great team, and since the NBA trade deadline was Thursday at 3 p.m., I believe, and if anybody of our listeners were following along with the trade deadline, the Cavaliers went absolutely crazy, basically revamped their whole entire roster. And the reason that they were doing that is because they were chasing greatness to become comparable to the Warriors, who they're trying to compete with. And I think everybody made moves in the NBA at the NBA trade deadline to bring their team up to that level of greatness to then become comparable to the Warriors. Because there's always that one team that everybody looks at the beginning of the year, or looks at over a span of years, and says, this is the model that we need to chase after. This is the cap space that we need to clear. This is the moves we need to make to put ourselves in positions to look like the Golden State Warriors. And I think you see it in the NFL as well with the San Francisco 49ers signing Jimmy Garoppolo to a 5-year, I believe it was $173 million, $137 million deal. Almost 74 to 90 million of that was guaranteed. And the reason that they did that, I believe, was they see the model of the New England Patriots and they see the model of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and behind both of those organizations are great quarterbacks. And Jimmy Garoppolo, in his 7 starts in the NFL, has never lost when he filled in with Tom Brady, and then his 5 starts out in San Francisco. And I think that, greatness drives that parity, and everybody tries to reach for that greatness. Everybody wants to be Tiger Woods. And if you even go back to when we were kids, and Michael Jordan's and Gatorade best, I think, advertising and slogan campaign was, "I want to be like Mike," and everybody wanted to be like Mike. And it drew. I think his greatness drove parity because everybody was fighting to be like the Chicago Bulls. Now everybody didn't have Michael Jordan, but everybody was going to make sure that they made the trades, they cleared the cap space, and they did what they had to do in their sport to become at that level. And you saw the Yankees do the same thing. While they're the big dogs in Major League Baseball, they made that huge move for Carlos Constantin, and now their lineup is looking almost unbeatable with the hitters that they have in their lineup. And again, I think that they saw the Houston Astros and they saw the Kansas City Royals, and they were like, man, we're the Yankees. Like, we're the ones that everybody is supposed to be chasing. So they needed to raise their bar, and they needed to get back up to that level and create that parity and put their name in that discussion, just how the Cavs did to get to the Warriors. And now I think San Francisco is doing, to put themselves up there in the conversation with New England. And, there's even teams, and for all you Browns fans out there, I feel good about you. Yeah,
there's not very many, by the way. I'm just going to throw it out there right now.
I feel good about what the Browns are doing in regards to how much cap space they have, who they're able to sign, and again, they're trying to reach up to that greatness and get to that parity level, because ultimately that's what us as competitors, me, you know how it is. We're playing a card game and we want to be the greatest at it. If I'm playing Connect 4, I want to be the greatest at it. I want to be the greatest at, whatever we do. And people either rise to the level and create parity, or, they fall off and they're down by the wayside, and they have to think of rebranding or regrouping or rebuilding. You always hear that. And in Philly, with the 76ers, trust the process with Joel Embiid and, the picks that they've acquired and the signs that they've made. So I think I think this is just an absolute great topic, and one that we could talk about for a while, because I think they chase each other, and they kind of create each other, because if everybody rises to the level of greatness, well, now we have parity, and we have that great competition. I wish the NBA All-Star Game would have some competition in it, because you get the best of the best versus the best of the best, and that would be, one good show to watch if they took it a little more serious.
Yeah, all those are great points. I just wish you didn't want to. I wish you wouldn't have brought up the Connect 4. I just lost to my son, who's almost 3 now, in Connect 4. I always forget the diagonals. I don't even think he meant to do it on purpose, but I lost to him anyway. I can't believe I'm actually admitting that on the show, but I did. But anyway, I think that greatness definitely brings parity and vice versa, and you explained it very well with that. And that could be an everlasting topic on who, as far as team or individual, and then what defines greatness. And I don't think we will ever get that chance unless that person listening out there heard me earlier say that there could be a formula that could define that. If there is such a thing, an algorithm, can't even spell the word algorithm, but I know it's out there, and you could create it, and it would somehow make this greatness factor. But, kind of like the BCS, it went only so far, and then now they have that 14 playoff committee. So anyway.
Exactly. You can't please everybody. And, it's just,
never will
it's just
happen.
one of those things. never. And I think as long as, and that's why when we talk about greatness and we talk about teams, we talk about individuals, everybody always can rattle off 2, 3, 4 guys because there's not that perfect formula or algorithm that we've been searching for to say, according to this, he is the greatest, and we can't say that. But I don't think that algorithm will ever be created or agreed upon. If it is created, it'll never be agreed upon by the masses because there'll always be somebody to throw a wrench in it to say, well, you didn't account for this number or that number or this championship or this all-star or what may be. So it's just one of those things, and it's a great topic and to talk about, and for people to, we would love to I would love to see, people's comments and reactions to what they think is great and who they think is great. And maybe me and you left some people out that we didn't talk about on the show.
For sure.
Get their opinions on it. So
definitely, we definitely left out quite a few. And actually, I think we're going to do that. We're going to put up a poll question of would you rather have greatness or parity? And then we'll ask, who's great in your mind. And so you can do that. We'll do that on our Facebook page, Real Deal, which is inside the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Just a reminder to check out our website out there, all the listeners, thegruelingtruth.net. You can find us on Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Music, iTunes, iHeartRadio. You can also download on an iPhone in the App Store. You can download Grueling Truth Sports Network app and listen to us along with tons of other shows and different guests coming on there. A lot of great guests for that matter. I know we'll get some on soon, but you can get on there and follow us and listen to us. And also, you have our Facebook pages, Patrick's Facebook page and my Facebook page, and you can also get on our Real Deal Facebook page and group, like I said. And then also on Twitter, we're also on there, and we do the social media thing with @CoachJB4 for myself. We also have our own Real Deal. TGT is our Twitter handle @RealDealTGT. And then Patrick, you said yours is Patrick. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
At Patrick Miller 4.
At Patrick Miller 4, so you can talk to us on there as well.
Yep. Feel free to reach out. I love talking sports. I love talking these topics, and it's definitely been a pleasure. And I think one other thing just before we conclude here is every team too, when we talk about greatness, is always somebody's looking to replace that greatness. Who's going to be the next Tom Brady? Who's going to be the next Michael Jordan? And not only do us as fans, we look at and we watch sports and we want to think that this person may be the next Tom Brady or this person may be the next Michael Jordan, but also organizations, they chase the greatness too. I'm sure every NFL organization out there is looking for their Tom Brady or looking for their Bill Belichick, and I can assure you every NBA team out there is looking for their Michael Jordan. That's for sure, because that'll drive them to championships and proven success.
Definitely well said there. Like you said, it concludes our show, our very first show together. Patrick, what did you think? How'd you feel?
I felt great. I think, like I said, I think this was a great topic, and definitely things that we can get feedback on. I think the poll's a great idea to have people give us their thoughts and what they think is when they're sitting at home, watching sports or enjoying an ice cold one with their friends, what they like to see. But again, I think every fan too always has that. Like you said, in using a good term, they have that team they love to hate, whether it's Duke men's basketball or you hate the Yankees or can't stand the Lakers or, and then people have their players too, where you got the LeBron haters and the Steph Curry haters and that thing too. So, there's teams out there that people love to hate, and there's players out there that people love to hate, and I think that's what drives the sport as well, which is why I think we need both. We need greatness and parity, like you said, because they do go hand in hand. Without one, you can't have the other.
Yep, definitely. All right, well, that concludes our show. Like I said before, don't forget to talk to us on Facebook or Twitter, and also go on our website, thegruelingtruth.net. For my guest / co-host, soon-to-be co-host, Patrick Miller, I am Josh Benjamin, signing off for our very first show together, Real Deal. Until next time, be real with what you say.
Thanks, guys.